Radio Mannin, Radio Mannin. Badi yn syrion y balacopi.
Gilg Jew, Gilg J as Gilg Nerach.
She Claare na Gael viscoil toya cartnish as babaliam musaldacha. My name is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert de Carslach.
Have you ever had tell of old Bobby Bob?
And I'd like to welcome you to Shachlay, Claare na Gael, a programme in which you'll hear something of the English language, as Angie Nias Clash and Perdenjach, Jane Gilg, and in which you'll hear something of the Manx Gaelic, Chenyanamera, the mother tongue of Ellen Vanning, the Isle of Man. As Bannacht de Trish. A visit to Machel churchyard brought William Gell to mention Sir Mark Cubbon. Well, he's rather less known now, I think, than Gell had expected him to be in 1906. Cubbon was perhaps an atypical part of British Empire history because he had great respect for Indian sensibilities, and it was probably that gained him respect in the Mysore province when he was administering there. Ons skielen na brerigen Grimm te skielen mesich a brer as a huwer. Angie ten der fetch a shaw ningele taiok no de doer voirok bes as de wel een lias voirok boele dag lei as nevelli cord our crusten naran bachte de. We started with the Cornish May Day celebration of Padstow last time. But Flora Day is held in Helston in Cornwall on the 8th of May. We start with a song of a cousin Jack, an exiled Cornishman, thinking of Flora Day and Helston, wishing he was there, and then we hear Helston Town Band. Tashu geestjach rish Radio Vanning, Stashu the Nation, Viscoller Scalia Mach, Vai Doolish, Ellen Vanning.
Wish I was in Helston, a-standing in the town, on a bright May morning, with the people all dancing round. I'm out here in America, 3,000 miles away. I wish I was in Helston, on a Helston, Flora day. I am just a cousin Jack from many miles away, from across the ocean and in the USA. Family came from Wendron, and when the mines closed down, came out here to Michigan and the virgin copper ground. Wish I was in Helston, a-standing in the town, on a bright May morning, with the people all dancing round. I'm out here in America, 3,000 miles away. I wish I was in Helston, on a Helston, Flora day. I remember my father say when he was just a lad, he was taken once to Flora Day and the pleasure that was had. His everlasting memory of a drum that kept the beat and the echo of the haunting tune as they danced off down the street. Wish I was in Helston, a-standing in the town, on a bright May morning with the people all dancing round. I'm out here in America, 3,000 miles away. Wish I was in Helston, on a Helston, Flora day. I am just a working man, a carpenter by trade. Managed to raise a family and keep a mortgage paid. But there's never enough left over when all is said and done to travel back 3,000 miles to the place that I call home. Ba 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 da ba 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 da ba ba da ba da ba ba.
The Oggy Men singing a nostalgic song, wanting to be in Helston for Flora Day, the 8th of May. And then an archive recording of Helston Town Band from 1947. They were playing the Helston Furry. It's never been written down, they just play it, and they don't play it anywhere outside of Helston, and they don't play it on any other day apart from Flora Day. I'm not sure what William Gell has in mind when he writes this. He writes about a bounding line drawn from Portmoor by the old Hibernian to Ballure. Well, that makes a bit of a triangle, but I'm not sure what of. In a cottage on the Bure at Portmoor, Jackie Kermode would have been living at the time William Gell was writing his poem in 1906, and Mona Douglas writes of having seen Jackie Kermode dance Riachan the Vanning, the dirk dance of the Kings of Man, there in the early 20th century down at Portmoor. From the sea at Portmoor, we go back up to the Hibernian following this bounding line, and just at the back of the Hibernian on the main road coming up out of the colony and heading to Slough Lake, just at the crossroads, coming up from Machel on the lower side and going up to Ballagillia to the Gooseneck. The Hibernian used to be a public house, and at one time in the early 19th century the landlady was Rachel Looney. She was originally from Ballaugh, her mother was Mary Neal, but her father was an Irishman called Isaac Redhead. Ons Gael ten Braer as a huur kiaw ni ons bilja. A sesh de vore te pesmoer a brech. Ach ten liasvoir och na butch, as renny sleetjel stiach se Gael in jai, as nisti cor pisha gern struenen. Treten braer chi huge een chid struen te chiter. Ten huur clash nun struen grey, de berg en perg te gugi chindeet gus tiger. As ti gui braerek gin hugi, nonne higge de we berg fai ni repi ons pischen. Ige na truen, te clashen de berge perg ni hugi chindeet gus morde alde. As riesti guige en braerek gin hugi, nonne mar morde alde, de jinnach is slug a shisi. Ach ag yn trastrwn gemwrt yn pes yn braer, te gugi, as te greu creer bi bis yn airs jay. Tan huwer clash yn strwn, gred de bi a pech vis gugi, chindeet gys min jeg, shen de greu fai egg. As te goil aal de jinnach min jeg feshach rai sulvoi. Ach, te chit de vei min jeg kat de lur, gelees ten ustje gul herish ne melen ek, as te tannach den Mary ne aishen, as na nis jou Caine a Chelia. Well, Helston Flora Day, as I mentioned, is a week after the start of May. This is a song that could have been in Claare Gael last time. It's a song that takes us to Ireland and the Machra Felt May Fair.
I am an ice with points and Gell, I aged as a thing. And when I'm dressed in my array, I look like any queen. Ye maidens get were on your way, and about to take your wear. On the 1st of May, I made my way to the market.
The Mahra felt May Fair, Anne and Francie Brolly. Anne Brolly became the first Sinn Féin mayor of Limavady, with her husband Francie also being voted in as a Sinn Féin councillor. Limavady, the Dog's Leap, is named for a dog that leapt the river to go and get help when Limavady was being attacked. Limavady, that's the name of the place. As nish verjaren doet de huur, beer de geurdige Veg Veen, de jaruge jinnum voor Gael warach. Eis rennie njauw kjanle Chris Erek, as rennie kjanle me giet wanle Veg. As hij de chimsige schoen en de jinu Ted bug. Rennie kjanlerish, as eis rennie lijele ernen doyacht, as hij het na stunas jaagse geel. As treber den ol een red vier ljouwer, henket verjeriges tai beg, as je gewoidjen stjaag aan. As er een oder awi follem, smunny, kaart de maid on begelen show. As rennie corlesh dulligen as keinjach de jino ljavi bugs on a Veg, as dag more jinnige golmach as chimsige vrouwen as berischen as kroin a hon heen, as 4 oers on a Veg, rennie as a lawek, les boge, as limmer ons klein me giertemooi. Sunny treb on huur ski, as we ang oil na pagernek, jinnach I correcion eg a dream of Veg, but more clusag g, as the meal hen cadlori. William and Constance Radcliffe's History of Kirkmagle has this to say about the Hibernian. The Hibernian was the first of several inns whose existence arose out of the improvement of the main road from Ramsey to Douglas and the consequent increase in traffic. Their principal purpose was to serve travellers rather than the local population. The Hibernian was first mentioned in Piggott's Directory of 1837. The licensee was the most famous of all the Machel innkeepers, the redoubtable Rachel Looney. A description of her in 1834, when she was about 47, reads, "She was an odd figure, dressed in a blue petticoat of some sort of cloth or flannel, surmounted by a man's pilot jacket, a good deal too long in the sleeves. To obviate the inconvenience this would have caused, the cuffs were turned back, displaying a large pair of muscular hands and wrists quite out of proportion to her size, as she was considerably below the middle height." the Youth Folk Ensemble of Wales, otherwise known as Abanc, and a contingent of them will be here for Nchruniach in July, and there they were playing a track they call Fits. More from them later. Stasiwn yn asiwn siant Radio Banning, a sé Claare na Gael and Claare Show. Mish Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert de Carslach.
Did the other hear tell of old Bobby Bob?
Vain Chier Shore is to Claare na Gael guller scalia macht de bio, be cop gira gedden, rishachten, Joris Golgus in a degger Radio Banning, as brewer kraman eish rish. The podcast guller John J. Claare na Gael, yes, as rish en regedden through in a degger Radio Banning, na trud keerder en podcast elia, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, na Alexa. This description from 1834 says of Rachel Looney, when going into Ramsey, she rode a large raw-boned cart horse, on which what did duty for a saddle was a sack thrown across the animal's back, from which straw might be seen sticking out. I then saw her come out exactly as before, except that instead of a sunbonnet on her head, she wore a man's hat of rough beaver. She employed some men to build an extension to the house, and when they ran short of stone, assured them that a supply would be ready on the following day. In order to obtain this, she's said to have spent the whole night carrying stones down off Barul in her brat, that's her apron. By 1841, on account of financial difficulties on the island, Rachel's husband John Looney had emigrated to Australia, where she followed him in 1843. In 1834, when a coin hoard was found in nearby Ballaburna, Rachel Looney was said to have sold the coins privately without declaring it. It seems that they were Anglo-Saxon coins from the 900s. De berg a gebreir giet de wees se chum ege hien rish, berge bij naach bergig wie vrouw. Ach, hagere der au rine tjere shen, kummel shelg se geel. Ren shedjen a carnen, gonster ni na modi, as iron legend a shell geren, sheen a maach through the geel, as heel a min jagad, as ve gien de vein a maastok. O, dort irish a huur, lig thou golgus a jelg, ga not tannachten mooi jane a soja, as renny gwi goud, de renny verjere cor kid. Ach, gau taas de jay, dort irish, tar back hums a knee. Sein thou cormagorus vo glas, nine a shell gern kai, ma saw de vod en a VM sorts, sein dutch crankle as grey, huur weg, gin ligas jaach me. As man a wel me clash and shen, ga ginum goil a glass wine doris. Esh van a min jeg lim a mach, as Janie a manra, as ginnel phone spare. Honnig a rie is na shell gern a berg eilen, as gau a toyach chalirach airter. The famous setting of the 23rd Psalm is to a tune called Crimmond. Crimmond is a town in a village rather, in Aberdeenshire, and this song, Crimmond, was written by Jessie Seymour Irvine in 1836 when her father Alexander was the Church of Scotland minister in Crimmond. And that's a famous recording of Crimmond, as I say, a village in Aberdeenshire, and that was by the Glasgow Orpheus Choir, under the direction of the choir's founder in 1906, Sir Hugh Roberton. Gedod rí is na Gael chit fagus de luur de ráshin na minjeg. Son, trefod smunion de rawad sugar jay. Renne limma soel herrish na tamagan, as haie a shilja. Gelees wij dorge haie bakkes a tai beg. Renne kronkel a doris, as doort hij, Huur weg, gin liege stjach me. Eis van doris fauslit day, as haie stjach on. As renne Gael fee voor de kledden nie a liabi bogegge. A morre gain, gauw en shell taiacht as a no. As tre hiele min jeg na carnen shell, gus tally-ho na shell geren, gedoddy tannacht en fene sauge, as doort hij, me huur weg, gin ligge dau gol mach, sein dau gol. Doshel de huur doris as doort hij, nish smunny de valley orschit backs a knee, as grain na foglen gerin. Tre renne rie is na shell gern ege fagen am in jeg leis a collier rish, renned cloe de chon. Ach ve ro gaste as ro tavi en son. Shomer ve fyen kledden lay. Now, to complete this triangle from Portmoor to the Hibernia, the third point is at Ballure. And next to the river where it winds down to the sea stood Ballure Cottage, and as heard in Claare, Gael not that long ago, Dorothy Wordsworth was staying there with Mrs. Elizabeth Brew and Miss Martha Trivett, and wrote about it in her diary for July 1828, which is what we were looking at. Confusingly, there's a house now called Ballure Cottage just by the tram crossing on the main road, but the original Ballure Cottage is down seaward of that. However, with William Gell having drawn that bounding line, and the triangle of Portmoor, the Hibernian and Ballure, I'm not quite sure what point he was making or what he was drawing attention to, but to complete that set of three lines, a bounding line drawn from Portmoor by the old Hibernian to Ballure, now would we fain say, Tre the lure. So that's an invitation to dwell a little longer in this area and look at some other associations. Based in the city of Rennes, which is in Brézuel, Higher Brittany, the East End, where for the most part French is the majority language, this is Breton singer Solène Lefebvre.
schön, okay, you mochi dat. Hey, money does is schön, okay, you mochi dat. Pusher with you dagger, chamman of ravite, oh, pusher with you dagger, chamman of ravite. Dira gutau le gada, tu savais tomber. Dira gutau le gada, tu savais tomber. Dira gutau le gada, tu savais tomber. Dira gutau le gada, tu savais tomber.
A song from the area around the city of Van in Brittany, Carantes d'Och and Dour, Love of the Earth, sung there by Solène Lefebvre. She's based at the time, for the time being anyway, whether she's from the city of Van, of Rennes, I'm not sure, but a lot of people go to Rennes, a big university town, city of course, so a lot of people go to Rennes anyway and end up living there. Dear reader, cast a glance around. There lies a happy hunting ground. Methinks here every sight and sound we see and hear on hill and plain are reminiscent of Hall Caine, king of romance, who here did reign. Well, fortuitously as it happens, Thomas Henry Hall Caine was born on the 14th of May, 1853. His father, John Caine, was from Ballaugh, and it was Hall Caine's grandmother, Isabella, who called him Hommy Beg, Little Tommy. To my dear friend Hommy Beg was famously the dedication of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Hall Caine's uncle, James Tier, was the master of the Central School in Machel, not far from the Hibernian, and when Hall Caine was 17, his uncle was too ill to continue with his teaching, so Hall Caine took over his role for a year, and he made habitable what he called Phoenix Cottage to live in during that time. I've often wondered, is that the same property which is called Phoenix Cottage, that stands on this main road opposite the Hibernian? In fact, my great-aunt Belle and family used to live there at one time. Fe jere, ren na shell ger an crunich am magita mushim in jeg, as ren ferjau cor gort en chasege beggen, de rawe ersen shul de bakkach as de gol de mall. Esh ren shelger snau in the yaig as the tai beg, as chile en ach ren I gillach mach, ma huur veg, ginliag as jach me, as honneke a doris farsler as doenerish na lug, chilirach. Ren na shelger goil tas de je shaw de kirelach, haig as a ri, as dinche de ulju verba an agen as a chlaschen. Esh doort en ri, lena verach nimmed shell grish. Ach when huur aglet jas tre honneki drauen min jeg ek gortich. Ren e nie kasege, huggi dulligen magita mush de chor eishtei, as doorti, lai shis al jabi ed ma vin jeg veen, as gau fei, de beer son slent vai de lia. Svi weg van gort, ma saw gerenne min jeg genachten weg je a more gain. As tre chile fire hjel chow mui doorte, gaan not tannachten stai. A musical evocation of Lang Ness from Tim Price's suite of 7 pieces inspired by the Manx landscape, which he calls Gem of God's Earth. Stasiwn yn asiwn to Radio Banning as nish as siachar at lag sé Claare na Gael vis reclasion. Mannin Veg Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Have you heard tell of old Bobby Bob?
Sign thou gulnan lurg, dortum in jeg. Cha bim got cho eishach rish. Gau a huur toyach der Caine, as dorti, ta fissem, de bios marwich, as de bim fegit me lummerken on shoos a geel, as tregit at de golje veg, ga nodum ligge dutch gol. Esh nim gedden bes on shoo, je yeri, treger am in jeg. Tret am I klaasjen shien a garen, tam I gennachten de vodum limme maag as ma gragen. Esh higge huur na raun jaartek as gauw I a glaasje in dors slash krietrom, as renne min jeg limmas roos stjaag se geel, as on slent by as manre. Tre honneke rie, doorte rish na shell gernegge, nish, eir shu ersen fine lay, der a vissen nee chit de bayon, as gin shu shiger, na wel shu ginu gil bide. Maar so gelees van green en olde lay, doort en rie rish na shell gern, nish, tar shu as gin shu gian thou a tie begs a gale. At the time that William Gell was writing, in 1906, Hall Caine was considered one of the most important literary figures, not just of his own age, but of all time. His books made him a household name in Britain and the United States of America. He was the first author to have a million-selling book, and he adapted his stories and made a huge amount of money from them when they were staged in London's West End and on New York's Broadway, as well as barnstorming tours of them. He was on personal terms with leading figures of his day, not just the literary world, but politicians and royalty. It was the popularity of his books with Queen Alexandra that made her prevail on King Edward VII to bring the royal yacht into the island whilst on a cruise following their coronation in 1902. She wanted to see the setting for those thrilling novels. In 1901, Hall Caine was elected MHK for Ramsey and was re-elected in that role and stayed in the role until 1908, though his many other commitments made him largely absent. Now, early in the morning of Flora Day in Helston, we heard about the furry dance, we heard the town band there, but early in the morning of Flora Day in Helston, before the furry dance begins, there's another tradition which is called the Hallan Tow. Now, Cornish band The Changing Room have a song about this custom, but they're obviously not Helstonians because they sing Hallan Tow instead of Hallan Tow. But this is The Changing Room.
So have you been soth mo visite Rydrod en oeg a boch a lonto hir a greg Question negato brav ca frises kitchos blan Brez a bacon don all my bone reckon glad Hori don e olen des kotsmins da envy Vinen guavats grenni ivri Am blitten goth i'w gilis glan en oeth di nachri Tonsiap 15 kilo hins a drys yn blendi chwi Dref a bow in Hallan Tow Gan stons a bws a lew Dref a bow in Hallan Tow Then gwynt o'n ni a ew Yn glas dros ragwas o as a ledyn dons i'w sarf Tus ben inision galws and efo sain sgarf And dons rag bwn yn dons rag ol a dons rag aventur Gwnis unas yn refas a fesor Yn fydd yn god i'w gilydd glan yn oeth di na chwi Ton siap cyns a gylo hyn a drys yn plende chwi Dref a boin halanto Gael dons a bws a lef Dref a boin halanto Dyn gwynt o'n ni a ef Claire a sblan yn coredd Rwydd a gwyn yn bros Yn sols i diolch i ser yn chweg A blex o ddim rhan ffeid A nethus fe yn gwafiw deg o'r nicol efo fe Dref a boin halanto Gael dons a bws a lef Dref a boin halanto Dyn gwynt o'n ni a ef Sols y diag i ser y gweg A plex o dim bryn ffeid A nethus me y gwafiw deg o'r nicol efo fe Dref a boin halanto Gael dons a bws a lef Dref a boin halanto Dyn gwynt o'n ni a ef O dref a boin halanto Gael dons a bws a lef Dref a boin halanto Dyn gwynt o'n ni a ef O dref a boin halanto Gael dons a bws a lef Dref a boin halanto Dyn gwynt o'n ni a ef Dyn gwynt o'n ni a ef
Cornish band The Changing Room with their song Hallan Tow. Although, as I say, the tradition in Helston is Hallan Tow, and that's even though the next line is My Jolly Rumbelow. So in Helston, what you hear them singing is Hallan Tow, My Jolly Rumbelow. So it doesn't rhyme, it's Hallan Tow. Hall Caine was the highest paid author of his day, selling over 10 million books worldwide, with works translated into many languages. As well as plays, there were films. Famously, the last silent film made by Alfred Hitchcock in 1929 was Hall Caine's The Manxman. But it wasn't the first film version of it. I think there were two other film versions made. I'm not sure that they're extant any longer, but certainly Alfred Hitchcock's The Manxman is available. Hall Caine's themes were provocative and daring, challenging people's perceptions, making people think, and William Gell writes of his work as the banner of the truth unfurled, to set before a thinking world how virtue from its throne is hurled. His childhood's home here, just above, ere simple-hearted Pete did prove the pangs of unrequited love, when wayward Kate, maid of the mill, had sacrificed her better will to thus dishonour Hyman's bill. Again, Gell is referring to that 1887 novel The Manxman, with Pete Quilliam, the fisherman of Ballure, courting his childhood sweetheart, Kate Crugene. Pete goes away to make his fortune so that he can marry Kate, having made his fortune, and he leaves his best friend, the advocate Philip Christian, to look out for her, and I'm afraid that was his mistake. As tre renke a Doris renne krankelair, as Dillia kronkelair, as Dillia mach, Machiúr gin ligas diach mi. Esh doshel a Doris, as high a rees diach on. As unshen van a shadow moidjen, a sail and a fairer be by a nagen rai. Ren a voidjen skriech maag tre honneke, sham en jeg, dunja na shadow unshen, lesh kroon a chionega. Ach ich a reed a kingelori, gawi liorish a lau as doorte. Neos gol merum gus a chastjelem, as beam a ven chesha veen. O nim, dreger a boidjen, ach seinden bin jeg chit nies, ga nodens vergele. As doort en ree, ni a tannachten murt gouds tauwes bio, as gejinne laal beg. Esh henke min jeg, as limmers jag on, as ren na huur kianle ted de huwen en rish, as ren li jele ljorish a lau ek heen mach as de tai beg. Ren a ri cor a voigen ellen a chabel egge, as ren cor leshi gus a chastje legge, bol van banish na yunu lesh woojlid moor. 'Tis many a long step, Shimmer Kosh came farther, is a traditional Irish lyric, but it's set to their own tune by a group calling themselves the Magical Folk of the Faraway Tree.
Sammy came father the mishegus McGraw. For me she's on Balach agus green me ma. Can ik me Colleen Dahul agus shake chuck on board. I can walk it through my father no one will share on board. Came father the mishegus McGraw. Lauren Colleen Dahul on top of the air on board. Is somebody calling Jasmine or a titfish share on board? Oh, it's maybe Kura crouching or a wacky me.
The Magical Folk of the Faraway Tree was a project based in Dublin, and they took lyrics from Peter Kennedy's 1975 publication, Folk Songs of Britain and Ireland, and they set them to their own tunes, including the Irish ones, like that one, Shimmer Kosh Came Farther. In fact, Mona Douglas contributed to that publication, and this album by the Magical Folk of the Faraway Tree contains Time to Go Home, which is the Ren I Vai, in English, of course, Te Tregol Tai. But, well, perhaps I'll play it another time, but I don't think you'll like it, to be honest. Maar so henke huur de wei na ben sers na ben rein. As renish is a rie bege koejach de manre, les tamelt jouwer. Van min jij gul shirweishach de mai, as the moor jintje, as for moor jintje, as renne limma ons clai magiet gera chastjel. Of witching, eerie, sweet ballure, what wondrous stories yet endure, though of their truth by no means sure. 'Tis thus the old romancer writes, held it such measure of delights, the paradise of elves and sprites. Well, I'm not quite sure who the old romancer he means here, but that's all in quotes. Ach nish sein dun cwr stop journey shorish tamalt. Chris Pearson will be with you from 7 to 9, bringing you the best of chill-out music for your Sunday evening, and at 9 o'clock Judith Lay will be here with her programme Sundown. This final piece of music in Claare and Gael is by the young Welsh band Abanc again, and it's a piece called Turbo, which includes an adaptation of a tune called Concert William Ab Owen Pen Craig. As my Delua Shene by Claare and Gael here show, and so until the next time, this is Robert Cutting Carlo, Robert de Carslach.
Old Bobby Bob.
Wishing you a very good night, Eve I'm a Chriort, as my Yerian share Dutch.